Hey, how are you? Welcome to another IELTS journey with Fabi. We talk about everything and anything IELTS. Yeah, so if you need help with the IELTS test, this is the right place for you. Okay, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Fabi. I'm an English teacher and I live here in Brisbane, Australia. And I help people get the score they need on the IELTS test and do the test only once. No one should be doing the IELTS test more than once. All right. Okay. So if you have questions, you can pop the questions in at any time. Maybe I will miss your question. Okay. But if I miss your question, I'll try my best to get to it at the end. Some people are saying hello from India. Tell me where you're watching this from. I love to know where you guys are watching this from. Okay. So let me know where you're watching from. Okay. And pop questions in if you have any. All right. So today, we are going to talk about something that is your starting point. If you don't know this, sorry, you cannot do the IELTS test. And I know that so many new people here in this channel, all right? Instagram, YouTube, so many new people. So, what we're going to do is today I'm going to talk to you guys about the test. How does the test work? Okay. What's the first thing? Timor Leste. Cool. Nice. Timor Leste, you won Timor. That's awesome. India, Timor, so cool. All right, okay. So, as I was saying, so yeah, so the first thing, guys, you have to do is to know how the test works. Okay, from beginning to end. This is the most important thing. Okay, and that's a question I always ask. Oh, Fabi, where do I start? What do I do? Guys, this is a start knowing how the test works. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Are you ready? Okay, so if you have questions, you can pop them in. And we are going to start. Okay, so first of all, okay, let's go over all the parts of the test today. And as I'm talking about the parts, you might get a bit confused. So you pop the question in, okay? And if I miss it, I'll get to it at the end. All right, cool. Now, what is the IELTS test? First of all, lots of people don't know what the IELTS test is. So basically, the IELTS test is an English test, okay? And if you're here, you're probably here because you need to do the test. Someone told you, okay? But if no one told you yet, pay attention because maybe doing the test, even if no one's asking you to do it, will give you great opportunities. And that's what I like to talk to you guys about also. All the opportunities. You want a better job? Do the IELTS test. Prove to people you have a better English. You might get the promotion. Oh, I'm a bit sick of my job here in my country. I want to try something different. Do the IELTS test. Oh, I want to study abroad. It's my dream. Do the IELTS test. Oh, I want to live in another country. Do the IELTS test. All of these dreams that you guys have, the IELTS test will help you with that. So let's get started. Okay, so as I said, the IELTS test is an English test, and people do it for different reasons. People who want to live abroad, people who want to study abroad, and people who want to work abroad. Oh my God, three things. Study, live, and work abroad. Okay, so the IELTS test is an English test. It is recognized all over the world. Okay, not only Australia, not only England, United States, Europe, even Europe, Canada. Okay, all right, Canada, even Canada. All these countries, they take the IELTS test. How cool is that? It's an international exam, accepted all over the world. Okay, so think about that. Okay, and as you know, it tests the four skills. So it will test your English, of course, your listening, reading, writing, and speaking. All of these four things. Okay, so we are going to start today with the listening. Okay, so the listening part of the IELTS test, the listening section of the IELTS test has four parts. Okay, and in total, it has 40 questions. Okay, so 40 questions. So you have the first part of the listening, 10 questions. And the first part is always something, how can I say? They will always talk about something that is kind of everyday conversation. Usually two people talking, okay? Everyday conversation. Part two will be one person talking, okay? One person talking. And usually it's going to be a kind of a simple topic also, giving information about something most of the time. Part three, listening, that's when things get a little bit tricky. Okay, that's when things get a little bit tricky, part three, because it's going to be a conversation in an academic context. So maybe you have two students talking about a topic. Maybe you will have a teacher and a student talking. Maybe a student calling the university to get information about a course. And in part three, you can have up to three people. So that can be a bit tricky. However, part four of the listening test, 10 questions again. All right. And in part four, that's where there will be one person talking about one academic topic. So for part four on the Ielts test, you have to imagine that you are inside a university. Okay, inside a university, in a classroom, listening to a teacher talking about a specific topic. That's what part four is. Okay. And remember, one thing that a lot of people find tricky with the IELTS test, the listening part, is because you can only listen once. Yeah. That's something that is very different from most exams out there. All right. But there are lots of strategies. Okay, guys. I teach my students so many strategies that will help them succeed on the test. All right. So when you know what you have to do, listening once is not a problem anymore. Okay. So be aware of that. Okay. So, guys, if you have any questions about the listening part of the IELTS test, you can pop the questions in. All right. Goody, goody. Okay. Now, let's move on to the reading, to the reading part. Okay. But then I'm going to talk about academic and general. Okay. So, reading academic. Okay. Reading academic. Reading academic, you will have three parts, three long texts with academic topics. Okay. So, reading for the IELTS test, academic, okay, the academic test can be tricky. You have really long texts, okay, 40 questions in total. Okay, will be, I think, 12, 13 questions per part. Okay, it depends. I think the last part has more questions, if I'm not mistaken. But about 12 to 14 questions, right? And then you will read some topics that are quite academic. Okay, so you can read about biology, you can read about the environment, education, history, lots of topics that are very academic, and the text is quite long. But if you're going to do the reading general, if you're going to do the general reading, general test, you will have three parts again, 40 questions again. But part one, you have two very short texts. And these texts are about everyday things. Okay. Then in the middle, part two, you're going to have two medium sized texts. Okay. Again, about everyday things, you know. Some topics could be how to talk with HR. It could be you have a problem with your insurance. You know, this is what you have to do. Everyday things. All right. But then part three of the general is also academic. Is also academic. So you think about it. All right. So that's why if you were with me last Monday, you heard me saying that if you're going to do the general, it's not a bad idea to practice the academic because the last part of the general is academic. So you should be ready to read academic texts, especially if you need a six or more. All right, guys, that's what you should be doing. 100%. Okay, 100%. No doubt about it. Okay. So, again, academic in general, 40 questions. All right, 40 questions. And then three parts again, but the general is a bit easier. However, the pointing system is different. So make sure you are always checking the points. Okay, guys, always, always, always. All right. Now let's move on to the writing part. Writing part of the IELTS test. It doesn't matter if you're going to do writing academic or general. You will have 1 hour. Oh, sorry, guys, I forgot to tell you. The reading part, you have 1 hour to do. 1 hour to answer 40 questions. Okay, 1 hour. And writing, also 1 hour. And you have two parts. Okay, so let's talk about the general one first. So, IELTS general, okay, the first part, you have a picture. Could be a graph, could be a chart, could be a diagram, could be a map, could be so many things, a table, and you have to write about it. Okay. You have around 20 minutes to write 150 words plus. Task 1, academic. Task 2, academic, is the essay. Lots of different topics, 5, 6 different types of questions, lots of different topics, academic, of course, and you have to write 250 words plus. And the recommended time is about 40 minutes. So 1 hour to do task 1 and task 2. Recommendation, 20 minutes for task 1, 40 minutes for task 2. That's the recommendation. Okay. Now, general. So IELTS, writing, general. Also two parts. Okay. In the first part, you have to write a letter or an email. Okay. Three types of letters: formal, informal, semi-formal. Okay. And again, just like task 1, writing academic, in the writing general, the recommended time is also 20 minutes. And task 2, again, an essay. All right. So, when we think about the writing part of the IELTS test, academic and general, okay, both, we can see that the first part's completely different. Completely different. So if you're going to do the test, make sure you practice and you know what you have to do in task 1. However, task 2, the only thing that will change is topics. So for example, if it's academic, they might ask you questions about education, university. If it's general, they might ask you questions about traveling, okay? Family, people in general. Okay. So you have this, but the type of questions are the same. So to me, personally speaking, it doesn't matter when you come to task 2 if you're practicing for academic or general, they are quite similar. The only thing you have to think about is the topics, okay, the vocabulary that you might need, because they are very, very similar. Even the examiners, okay, when they're checking, the requirements are the same for task 2. Doesn't matter if it's writing academic or writing general. Okay. If you have any questions about writing, pop the questions in. All right, guys. Now, speaking. Speaking. Okay. So, speaking test. With the speaking test, it lasts for about 10 to 15 minutes. It depends. It's more like 12 to 14, okay? Because you have three parts. Each part's anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes, okay? It really depends on your answers, depends on the examiner. No more than 15 minutes, that's for sure, okay? So when you get there, the examiner will say, "Hello, how are you? What's your name?" And then it's gonna go, "Where are you from?" Maybe ask questions about your hometown. What do you do? Do you study? Do you work? What's your job like? What's your school like? Gonna ask you these kinds of questions. Like breaking the ice, okay? Getting to know you. And then they will ask you, "So, I'm gonna ask you some questions about this topic." And the topic will be very, very general. Routine topic. Let's talk about photographs, taking pictures. Let's talk about traveling. let's talk about restaurants. Okay, so very, very general topics. That's what they're going to talk about. First, they might stick to one topic, they might have up to three topics. It really depends. Okay, maybe they ask you about a topic, maybe you don't know much about a topic, they might change the topic. But if you know much about a topic, maybe you can continue. And again, guys, in speaking, most of my students have been telling me that even though it's a test, it feels like a conversation. So people who are worried, oh my God, it's a test, relax. Because most of my students have been telling me that they feel it's a conversation. So that's something to think about if you're a little bit worried about the speaking part. Okay, cool. So part one is just questions about everyday topics, right? Then the examiner will move on to part two. I don't think part two is complicated, but part two is just different. Okay. And that's what I think people get a little bit worried about. Because in part two, the examiner will ask you to talk by yourself. So part one is question, answer, question, answer. Part two is you talk. This is the topic, you talk. Okay. So the examiner will show you the topic. The examiner will show you. And the examiner will give you 1 minute to prepare. So they give you a piece of paper and a pen and you start writing. You take notes. This is what I'm going to say. It's what I'm going to say. So I'm going to say you have 1 minute for that. And then the examiner will say, you can start talking now. You have 2 minutes to talk. And you go blah, 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 blah for 2 minutes. All right. So that's part two of the speaking test. And personally speaking, it's not that complicated. It's not that hard, but it is different. I agree with that. It's very different. Okay. But there are so many strategies you guys can use. Okay, guys, so many strategies. All right. So you can feel better about part two of the speaking test. And then the examiner will head to part three of the test. Okay. So part three of the test, the examiner will ask you more abstract questions. You will notice that when you start practicing for the test, you will notice that the questions in part one are simple, short. Questions in part three are much longer, much, much longer. Okay. And it's very common for you to miss a few parts of the question in part three. If that happens to you, just ask the examiner to repeat the question. Okay, just ask them, oh, can you repeat that, please? And the examiner will do it because it's fine. Okay, because the questions are longer. But good thing is, these questions, so the topic for these questions are related to part two. So let's say in part two, they asked you to describe a party that you enjoyed. Part three will be questions about parties. Let's say that in part two, they ask you to describe, I don't know, a piece of electronics, something, a device that you use every day. Maybe part three be about technology. Makes sense. So it's connected. So I don't think it's a big problem. Um, One of my students did a test recently and she said that it was all about transport. How do you go to school? What's your favorite kind of transport? Tell us about a journey you enjoyed on public transport. You know what I mean? So, yeah, and they continue with the same topic. All right. Okay. So that's something that happens in the speaking part of the IELTS test. Okay. So, guys, pop your questions in. I'm going to give you a review of all the parts. Okay. Give you a review of all the parts. Pop the questions in. Okay. Pop the questions in. So, part one, listening, 4 parts, 40 questions. Part one, listening, quite easy. Then it gets harder. Part four, it can be quite tricky. Okay. Reading for the IELTS test. Reading academic, 1 hour to do it, 40 questions, 3 long texts. The last text being a bit tricky. A bit tricky. Okay. Reading general. Again, 40 questions, 3 parts. However, the first part, 2 short texts. Second part, three medium texts. And the last part, one long text academic. But still 40 questions. And when you are practicing, make sure you know the one you are practicing. Okay, make sure you know the one you are practicing. Okay. And then, of course, when you are practicing, make sure you're checking the correct scores because if you are doing the general one, the scores are different. Okay. So when I talk about scores, what do I mean? The IELTS test, the top score is a 9, not a 10. It's a 9. Lots of people say, I want to get a 10. I said, it's not possible because it goes up to 9. Okay. So 9 is the highest score you can get. And depending on how many answers, how many answers you get correct, that's the score you get. So, for example, if you're going to do the IELTS academic reading, 30 points, it's a 7. If you're going to the general, 30 points is a 6. Okay? So be careful with that. Okay? Then the writing, same thing. Okay, the writing, 1 hour to do, academic or general. With the academic, you have to describe a picture and then you write your essay. You have to describe a picture. They recommend about 20 minutes. I'd say more like 15. Okay. And 150 words or more. With the essay for academic, they recommend 40 minutes. I would recommend 45. Okay. Because remember, you're going to use 15 to do task one. Okay. And then 250 words or more. Okay. For the general, task one, you have to write an email or a letter. All right, email letter. And you will have to, you need about 150 words. And again, 15 to 20 minutes, no more than 20. And guys, remember, task two is worth double the amount of points. So my recommendation is always focus on task two. And again, Fabi, should I do task two first or task one first? It's personal. How do you know what works for you? Start practicing. Start practicing and you will know. Okay, start practicing. Sorry. Start practicing and you will know. Okay, that's it. And for the speaking part, it's going to take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, 12 to 14 minutes. Okay, 3 parts. First part, something very simple, very basic. Second part, that's the tricky part where you have to talk by yourself. But don't worry, the examiner will give you the topic and will give you time to take notes. Okay, the examiner will give you time to take notes. And then you will start talking. And my recommendation, talk for a full 2 minutes, please. Okay, guys. Because if you finish at 1 minute, maybe the examiner will just stare at you, waiting for you to talk more, to speak more. Okay. And then part 3 is the tricky part. If you want a 6 or more in the speaking part, you need to do very well, okay, in the third part of the test. Very, very well. And one thing that can be tricky about part 3 of the speaking for the IELTS test is that the questions are quite long. So the questions are long. Okay, so when the questions are long, you might get a little bit lost. Make sure you ask the examiner to repeat the questions for you if you need to. Okay, make sure you ask them. And it's completely fine. They understand, they know. Okay, they know. All right, okay. So, guys, pop questions in. I'm going to go back. There were some questions here. Let me see. How to ace IELTS exam without coaching classes? Look, I think it's quite difficult, okay, to ace. When you say ace, what do you mean by ace? Okay, guys. And you know, I've been telling you for a long time. Listening and reading, it's something that you can practice by yourself. You practice, do the test, check your points, get your score. Okay? But then even in even in listening and reading, I've seen people get stuck. And then we have one lesson together and they improve 1 point. So I don't think it's a good idea to do it by yourself. You can try, but it's going to take you a long time and you might not get to where you want to be. So, especially for speaking and writing, it's almost impossible because you need the feedback. You need to know whether you're doing the things correctly or not. So, I think it's very difficult to do it by yourselves. Okay. With my students, what I do is I train them, I help them. And then some of the things they do, they can start doing by themselves. And if they get stuck, they talk to me. So with my students, I do both. I help them so they can be more independent. But at the same time, even when they are independent, sometimes you get stuck. And I'm always ready to help them whenever they need. Okay. So I think it's very difficult to get a high score if you do it by yourself. I asked for help when I did my test. So yeah, I think help is essential. Okay. Next question here. I always lost concentration in 5 minutes first in the listening. Okay. So, guys, if you're losing concentration during the listening, it's because you probably don't have very good strategies. You don't know what to do. If you get lost, it's because you don't know what to do. You have to focus on strategies. You have to know, you have to, like sit down. Let's say you're practicing by yourself. You sit down. Let's say you're practicing on paper. Get your pen, pencil ready. I know what I have to do because I practiced. I know. Okay. And you press play and you start. Because the people who get lost are the people who don't have strategies. I was talking to a student recently yesterday, yes, on Monday. And she said, "Oh, Fabi, I used to get really lost in listening. But then you told me something. You said something, and I applied, and now I'm just getting sevens." How cool is that, guys? So it's all about strategies. And again, I share tons of strategies with my students. Okay, I share with them what's working for most people. But sometimes the one I recommend doesn't really work. So I give my students another one and then that one works. So you have to look for strategies and check the ones that work for you. Okay. So you're missing strategies if you're getting lost. Next question. Next question. Let me see. Does it help using idioms, slangs, and phrasal verbs? Okay, let's think about this. Phrasal verbs, they tend to be a bit more informal, but there are some phrasal verbs that would work really well in academic writing. So make sure you know those ones. Slangs. I would recommend slangs maybe in the speaking part. Okay. But slangs that are common, not slangs that are very specific. Okay, guys? Common slangs. Okay. That's fine. Not too bad. And idioms, yes, in the speaking part. Maybe in the writing also, but speaking part, it would definitely work. All right, Vicky? How are you, Vicky? All right. Any other questions here? No more questions. Okay, let me check YouTube. No more questions. All right. Okay. No more questions. So, guys, today we talked about the how the IELTS test works. Okay, so we went over all the topics. So if you're watching me on Instagram, head to YouTube. This will be available on YouTube. All right, and you can watch again as many times as you want. Get a pen or pencil, take some notes. Make sure you know how the test works. This is the first step. Someone tells you you have to do the test. Oh my God, what now? Find out how the test works. That's the first part. Scoring. Find out the score you need. Okay, I'm not going to talk about scores today. It's too much. Okay, so today is just the structure of the test because lots of people they do the test without knowing the structure. And then you pay what? $400, $300 for the test. And then you don't get the score you need because you don't even know how the test works. All right. Okay. So if you have any other questions for me, pop comments in here or just send me a message on Instagram. Okay. I check my messages on Instagram. All right. If you have any other questions. All right. Okay. So I was amazing. Okay. Just a few things happening here. All right. So any questions, send me a message on Instagram. All right. Okay. I will go now, but I'll see you next week. All right? Bye.